Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most foundational practices in Islam, the ritual prayer, known as Salah. You know, it's this daily rhythm that really structures the lives of over 1 billion people. But what is it really?
It seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer, well, it has a few more layers than you might think. Is it just a conversation with God, a set of movements, or is there something else going on entirely? Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start by defining what prayer even means, then we'll look at why it's so incredibly important. After that, we'll get into what actually makes it a requirement, and finally, we'll look at the fascinating practical details of how the first two prayer times are determined by watching the sky itself. All right, first things first. We have to understand that the word for prayer in Arabic kind of has two different but totally connected meanings. You've got the general, everyday idea of it, and then you have the very specific, sacred ritual. So linguistically, Salah just means a dua, which is supplication. You know, the simple, universal act of asking for something, like when the Quran says to pray for them. But in the religious, technical sense, Salah is way more structured. It's a formal ritual with very specific words and actions, kicking off with the declaration Allahu Akbar and wrapping up with the greetings of peace, Assalamu alaikum. So just how important is this formal ritual prayer? Well, let's put it this way. It's not just a friendly suggestion. It's described as an absolutely unbreakable pillar of the entire faith. The legal ruling on this is crystal clear. Salah is what's called a fard, which means it's a confirmed, non-negotiable obligation. And the weight of this is so huge that according to classical Islamic scholarship, to consciously deny that it's necessary is considered an act of disbelief. It is absolutely central to a believer's identity. And look, this obligation isn't just based on one source. It's completely cemented in place by what are known as the three pillars of evidence. First, you've got the Quran, the revealed scripture. Second, the Sunnah, which are the verified teachings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad. And third, the Ijma, which is the unanimous agreement of Islamic scholars on the matter throughout history. The Quran itself says, "Indeed, prayer has been decreed upon the believers, a decree of specified times." Now, this verse is a huge deal because it establishes two things at once. One, the obligation itself, and two, the unbreakable link between that obligation and specific, set times during the day. And this idea of it being a core part of the structure, well, it's illustrated perfectly in a really famous teaching. The Prophet Muhammad said that Islam is built on 5 pillars, and right after the main declaration of faith, what does he mention? Establishing the prayer. See, it's not just another brick in the wall, it's one of the massive columns holding the whole thing up. Now this is where things get really interesting. The relationship between prayer and time. In Islamic law, time isn't just a box that you do the prayer inside of. No, time is the actual cause of the prayer. It's the trigger. This concept is called the sabab, or the legal cause. Think of it like this. The moment a prayer's time window opens, say the time for the noon prayer arrives, that is the legal trigger that makes performing that prayer an immediate duty for you. The clock starting is what makes the race mandatory. So here's the crucial point. When a prayer time begins, you have this nice wide window to perform it. But as that window starts to shrink and time is about to run out, the obligation gets more and more focused on those last few moments. Delaying it to the very end without a good reason is seen as blameworthy, because you're basically pushing that obligation right to its breaking point. So let's see how this actually works in the real world. How do you know when these time windows even begin? We'll start with the very first prayer of the day, Fajr, which is tied completely to the light of dawn. The tradition makes this really cool distinction between two dawns. First, there's the false dawn. It's this vertical pillar of light that shoots up in the sky, but then it disappears, and it gets dark again. That does not start the prayer time. The actual start is what's called the true dawn. It's a horizontal band of light that spreads all the way across the horizon, and after it, it only gets brighter. That is the moment the obligation for the Fajr prayer is triggered. From the first light of dawn, we now move to the shadows of midday. The second prayer, Zohar, is determined entirely by the sun's position and the shadows that it casts on the ground. Now, the starting point for Dhuhr is something everyone agrees on. It begins at a moment called zawal, which is literally right after the sun has hit its absolute highest point in the sky and just starts its journey down. That moment, your shadow is the shortest. That's the moment right before the Dhuhr time begins. But here's where we get to see the beautiful nuance of Islamic law in action. While the start time is clear, the end time was a point of scholarly discussion. The great scholar Imam Abu Hanifa believed the time for Dhuhr ends when an object's shadow becomes twice its length. But his two most famous students, Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, had the view that it ends when the shadow is simply equal to the object's length. And both are considered totally valid legal interpretations. Of course, these days, most of us don't go outside with a stick to measure shadows. We have apps on our phones and calendars that are set with incredible precision using astronomical calculations.
So that naturally makes you wonder, right? If we have all this technology, is all this ancient knowledge about reading the sky and watching shadows, is it all totally obsolete?
And the answer is a definite no. Absolutely not. Because this knowledge isn't just for history books. It's for the person who might be lost in the desert, or the sailor out at sea, or really anyone, anywhere, who finds themselves without a phone or a watch. The fundamental principles are just as practical and necessary today as they've ever been. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to ponder. When your day isn't structured by a digital clock, but by the subtle shift of light at dawn and the growing length of a shadow in the afternoon, how does that fundamentally change your perception of time, of nature, and of your place within it all?